Hello and welcome to my channel. Go ahead, hit the like, hit the share. This video, we're going to talk about, yet again, R. Kelly's denial for his bail. And it's just funny, as usual, every time he has a court appearance, there's always a tainted narrative being painted. So the first thing that caught my mind before the verdict, stating that they were denying his bond request, I saw this article pop up saying R. Kelly's defense team plots 1.8 million scheme to get singer released from prison. Then I see R. Kelly desperate for jail release. I'm too famous to be a flight risk. Now, of course, there were many other articles put out there. And in typical fashion, in the midst of everything that should have been going on, while everybody was distracted, I just noticed something. And I'll point that out a little bit later. But let's just go over some of these articles first. Let's start with this video.
The New York federal case against Grammy-winning artist R. Kelly is expected to be the first of the 4 pending cases against him to go to trial. Kelly is accused of having sex with underage girls. The New York case alleges that he also gave a girl herpes without disclosing that he had the disease. In 2008, Kelly was found not guilty in a child pornography case. The latest charges surfaced following the Lifetime documentary series Surviving R. Kelly, which featured alleged victims' stories of manipulation and abuse.
I would give my life for my justice and any other woman you validated.
R. Kelly has consistently denied any wrongdoing, saying any relationships were consensual and the girls were all of the age of consent. He lost his composure during a 2019 interview with Gayle King on CBS This Morning.
I'm fighting for my life. Y'all killing me with this. I can't help 30 years of my
Robert.
30 years of my career.
Right now, you're obviously getting a one-sided take on R. Kelly. You're getting snippets of video that are produced and packaged in a way to make him the worst possible. You got to remember, we're talking about how in some instances are 20 to 25 years ago by persons who have already testified and or given statements under oath saying something that's absolutely contrary to what they're saying today.
So R. Kelly, R&B superstar, has, cases everywhere. You're talking about state court in Illinois, federal court in Illinois, and 2 federal cases in New York, one of which will be the first trial set to go, which has now been rescheduled from July to September. They're working on a jury questionnaire. But in the meantime, they're still trying to get R. Kelly out of jail. Is he a risk of flight? Is he a risk to the community? Let's bring in Ashley Banfield. If you haven't heard the big headline from today, which is the big headline today, Ashley. So Ashley's back with Court TV, special contributor. Let me ask you this first, Ashley. Were you ever a fan of R. Kelly? Be honest here.
No, I Believe I Can Fly. I didn't buy his music, but I didn't buy a lot of music. I was just sort of a passing fan. I was a huge fan of someone like Prince, and so when news erupted about Prince, it affected me deeply. Not so much about R. Kelly, although I'm always fascinated with someone who's so successful and is in the public eye, finds themselves in such a sticky wicket.
So here, one of the issues for whether or not he should be granted bond in this case is that the prosecution is arguing, the feds are arguing that, listen, this guy's got money, he's got people on the outside who are figuring out a way to get him out and then just hide him somewhere. Whereas R. Kelly's attorneys filed papers today saying, listen, What's going on with all these people making plans that have nothing to do with R. Kelly? These are people on social media just chatting, and he doesn't have money. He's got a $2 million government lien, a tax lien on him. So do you think the guy who thought he could fly, believed he could fly, is an actual flight risk?
Well, gosh, that whole idea about him having a network of people who will support him if he decides to flee, that is a really intriguing question, because I think we can all look at other cases of people who not only were facing indictment, but at one point in their lives, these famous people were even convicted and still had legions of fans that would show up and do anything. I'm thinking about Michael Jackson back during his trial when all of those people came to the courthouse. One woman brought all the guns to release them. I think that network of fans issue is honestly a serious one. I do believe that if R. Kelly had no money and owes the feds $1.8 million in taxes, I think there are people who would help R. Kelly. Now, I also think that it's very hard to get on a commercial airplane right now without being extremely obvious. So that's a strike against the prosecutor's argument that he could fly. But maybe there are other ways to get around. Certainly, if you have fans who have a lot of money, you can start that.
Do you think he's a risk to the community? Because that's another part of this, right? The charges against him, especially in the world we're living in now where we're supposed to be social distancing, he's accused of doing the opposite of social distancing.
Good point. So I prefacing it with saying, if he is guilty of these charges, he's definitely dangerous to the community, right? However, in the interim, I go back to someone like Jeffrey Epstein. When Jeffrey Epstein was sentenced to 18 months in that sweetheart deal in Florida and was serving in the county jail, he was allowed to get out every day to go to his office. I don't know if people know this, but that sweetheart deal was even sweeter than we knew. He was going back and forth to his office every single day. He had paid a few guards to pick him up at the jail, take him to his office, stand guard outside of his office doors, and guess what happened? Vinny, he assaulted other girls during that work release. So, danger to the community when you're a sex offender or an alleged sex offender in R. Kelly's case. Yeah, that's a dangerous, dangerous game to play because it's not something you can just turn on and turn off.
How about this, though? I've spoken with Steve Greenberg many times, and his big concern is he's got a client who can't read or write. He's got hundreds of thousands of documents. It's going to take hundreds of hours to prepare for this trial, and he can't do it because he's not going into the jail. How is an attorney supposed to prepare for a trial under circumstances like this where you can't spend that time with your client?
I think that's a super legitimate point to make. The fact that R. Kelly, first of all, I didn't even know that, so I was kind of astounded at the fact that somebody who's so incredibly musically artful can't read or write. But okay, I think that makes it very clunky for the process, and he has due process, and that lawyer makes a very good point. It's not fair for that lawyer to go into the MCC because it's a dangerous place. In just a few days, they doubled their cases of coronavirus, right? However, if R. Kelly at the Chicago MCC can make video appearances for his New York case, well, then there's technology that can probably be engineered to help R. Kelly and other inmates like him to have privileged conversations with their attorneys to prepare for their upcoming trials. I get it. Hacks are a problem. We all deal with it. And Jamie Dimon can have JP Morgan Chase chief can have conversations that are critical, and he can keep them encrypted. I think the jails can probably figure out a way to have encrypted conversations on laptops or on phones that are cleaned and disinfected for those inmates to have critical conversations with their attorneys.
It's going to have to happen. It's the only way we can prepare for these trials when we get back to them.
Yeah.
Ashley Banfield, once again, great to have you aboard. We're going to see you tomorrow night, right?
Now, as I just sit here and reflect on what was just said, one thing in particular that stood out to me is the fact that this lady's pointing out how some of R. Kelly's fans would be willing to help him trying to give weight to R. Kelly being a flight risk. And the one thing I start thinking about for those that are late in joining, supporting R. Kelly, or for those that have just been tuned out, for the last year, there have been reports about fundraising attempts for R. Kelly. You got all kind of people starting fundraisers for whatever reason. None, from my understanding, has been approved through R. Kelly. The only thing that I saw coming from the attorneys was the PayPal, which is the only reason that I did share it. But it wasn't something that I was heavily promoting. And this is why. It's because I've been told that R. Kelly's attorneys already have a deal in place for them to represent him. And as far as another attorney, for example, when people were talking about Tom Messerow being his attorney and even R. Kelly meeting with him for 4 hours, it was said that Tom Messerow was willing to take this case pro bono, with the exception that some things changed within R. Kelly's camp. Apparently, something was a little suspicious to him, if you ask me. That's what I got out of it, anyway. If you think about it, a lot of these high-profile cases will be accepted pro bono by an attorney, especially when they're looking at the fact they're trying to build a name for themselves. But I said all that to say it just appears to me that they were trying to use that and use the fact that R. Kelly still has supporters as an excuse that, okay, he still could be a flight risk. Somebody still could help him. And even if you go back, maybe sometime last year, Carrie Kelly was out talking about R. Kelly was planning to move or relocate to Africa. The point is, you will notice that it's going to be continuously things being fed to both bloggers and to the media to continue to justify the injustice that we see going on with this case against R. Kelly. Even before Azriel flipped and decided to start helping the FBI, recall them putting out the papers or the tabloids saying that they could be in hot water and be viewed as enablers for this whole sex trafficking bullshit. And then you had the articles that came out following that saying that Azriel and Joycelyn were trying to raise the funds for R. Kelly's defense. So from that point last year, of course, we have been seeing this ongoing turmoil and these ongoing distractions going on before our eyes to undermine R. Kelly's defense, whether it's a defense fund, a fundraiser, or just all outright attacking his defense team. All this stuff has been intentional. And a lot of these people are really irking my nerves feeding into the bull. So if at any time someone sends me a link and I end up in the chat and comment, please stop sending me the link, I very well mean that for the simple fact I'm not engaging in any of the bull crap. But anyways, back to the subject at hand. Just had to get that out there. Some of y'all are forgetting that these people driving these narratives with the media are willing to do any and everything it takes to keep up confusion and disruption. As far as a public fundraising attempt, we should expect there to be opposition. But as I said from the beginning, there's other things that could be done besides trying to raise money. When you're trying to raise money, there's always going to be an issue with our people for some reason or another. And just a quick shout out to everybody supporting the channel and the Cash App. I do appreciate everything. It's always appreciated, never expected. But anywho, what's particularly bothering to me is seeing how things progress, especially with this pandemic going on and all these other people who have been enabled the opportunity to be released for their health concerns. And yet we just keep hearing the same things as far as them not presenting enough to validate their claims as to why R. Kelly should be released. It's very sad to see photos such as this where people are begging for help in these prisons and jails. Meanwhile, you have these anchor people like the woman we just saw a minute ago saying that even when it comes to communicating with his attorneys, they could set up some type of monitoring system. Well, let me tell you something about that. Considering I've had a jail experience, and when it comes to the communication, okay, the jail facility I was in, it had this little thing where you could text and stuff like that. But what about when the computers malfunction and the correction officers don't give a flip about trying to get it fixed? One particular moment, I recall the message system took 16 hours to get a text message. How can you effectively communicate with a person and you have to wait 16 hours just to receive a message? It's absolutely ridiculous. But of course, people who have never been inside a jail facility or have ever been incarcerated for whatever reason wouldn't understand some common sense things such as what I just said. So, considering this man has such a high profile case, why would you compare him to a person who has been convicted of a crime when he is merely accused? They gave Jeffrey Epstein as the example, and never mind the fact that he was convicted still and has all these political ties. Maybe that's the difference between him and R. Kelly. He doesn't have the leverage to blackmail all these politicians. People have easily forgotten the articles that were coming out saying that R. Kelly's team were trying to secretly funnel $1 million for R. Kelly around the time, around the time after Surviving R. Kelly aired. I don't know what it is with this $1 million, but we just keep hearing it over and over and over. I don't think that's a coincidence. It says a lot when they'll tell us, oh, R. Kelly's getting denied his bond because he has these accusations against him. Meanwhile, other people with worse allegations against them are being released, such as this child rapist. It's particularly nerve-wracking when you see other articles popping out that are more unbiased than those such as TMZ that say R. Kelly's convinced he'll die of coronavirus in jail. R. Kelly denied bail after judge deems he's not at high risk. And what's funny is when you look at all these motions being submitted, the most important and key factor that should be highlighted is R. Kelly's violation of his rights and failed due process. According to this, you can also ask the court to acquit you if law enforcement officers or prosecutors violated your rights during the criminal process. Examples include entrapment, double jeopardy, prosecutor misconduct, jury tampering, selective prosecution, and violation of any of your constitutional rights. Well, I would have to say R. Kelly's 5th, 6th, and 8th amendments have been violated off top. You can say prosecutor misconduct in considering that old Kim Fox and her Time's Up agenda linked up with Crooked Avenatti and his janky evidence, which would be a clear example of misconduct. Never mind the fact that he submitted so-called evidence to CNN to be viewed before he handed it in. I think that's valid enough. A second thing that I want to point out that is not being mentioned is you look at this indictment and you see the time frames they give you, but they don't give you a specific date. And by withholding this specific date, how can you properly defend yourself and give an alibi should you be innocent if they don't give you a specific date? By giving you a date, you could establish an alibi to dismiss any bogus claims against you. The Eighth Amendment prohibits excessive bail or cruel and unusual punishment. Well, don't you think it's cruel and unusual considering everything that's going on, your court case being continuously pushed back, and you have not been convicted of a crime? And the only thing that they could back up you being a danger to the community is saying you're tampering with witnesses based on reports by bloggers. In so many words, we keep seeing over and over witness tampering, witness tampering. But what about on the other end? And how even from the beginning, them releasing Rashonda Landfair's name. A lady commented on one of my videos, mad because I put her picture up. Well, guess what? That picture's been up. Do a little research instead of just getting all mad all the time, and you will notice some of this stuff we're talking about. How would we know if they're not getting on social media doing the most? It's okay for them to do things like this, such as Michelle Kramer making a joke with his song title saying he's never getting out. Well, what would be wrong with us stating our opinion? Oh, I know. They're going to go find the most twisted and crazy tweets and make R. Kelly accountable for it. According to the attorneys, their remedy for the inmate that tested positive on R. Kelly's floor was that they have put him in isolation for 2 weeks and told him if he didn't die from COVID-19, he would then be returned to general population. Again, dogs are treated with much more dignity than inmates, it seems. I just had to point out this tweet because I so agree with what it said. This guy says, our founding fathers obviously made a mistake when it came to the Constitution, because if you're R. Kelly, they don't follow the Constitution. In fact, let's keep it real, America. If you're black, they don't follow the Constitution. If R. Kelly was white, he would have never been charged. And people kill me when they say, well, the FBI wouldn't have indicted them. Well, maybe you're confused about the indictment process and how the FBI can operate. So let me give you an example of how one guy got the FBI involved with his case. Now I'll pause it there because I'm going to show you. You can look at this whole little documentary, and it's called Cults and Extreme Beliefs, United Nation of Islam. I found myself here because I came across another interesting connection. Because as I keep telling you all these people are connected. And quite ironically, this docuseries about these cults are coming from A&E. Now, as what the man was describing, he was part of this little cult, as he calls it, the United Nation of Islam. He figured out what was going on. He contacted the FBI. They ended up sitting down, and that's where things started to lead to an investigation. Same thing we saw with Tim Savage going to the FBI and even being so grand and posting it on his social media, letting everybody know this is what he's doing. So if you ask me, in the beginning, Angelo Clary wanted to be the less conspicuous parent. Tim Savage was doing the most. But one thing I know for sure is something really caught my attention. About a month or so ago, maybe 2 months now, Azriel posted the Quran. And then I started thinking, because I try to stay away from my conspiracies on here. But truth be told, I feel like there are multiple secret societies in play. Seeing Azriel post her Quran book, it just made me think back to Louis Farrakhan and what he said about Barry Hankerson. And then I start noticing that obviously Angelo is proclaiming to be Muslim. But just like with everything else, they show the hypocrisy in everything they say. Because for them to be Muslims, they're doing a lot of excess, which goes against their beliefs. Maybe that's why Angelo wanted to stay in the background as long as possible, to give this impression that he's giving his daughter space. Meanwhile, he knows very well he's in connection with his daughter. Now, they can sit here and lie, but they forget. They get so anxious posting things. They've already shown us Azriel, obviously, on a FaceTime with her father, even though they're telling the media they're not in contact with her. Complete bullshit. My next video is going to tie in a few more connections. We're going to take this to Baltimore, because some things just stood out to me. Again, I feel like a lot of these people are being silenced because that is their oath. Angelo calls himself a part of the Brotherhood. And you'd be surprised just how many celebrities are a part of the Brotherhood. One thing these people didn't expect is the can of worms that they were about to open with this case against R. Kelly. Because it's a whole lot that's going to come to light. And if you ask me, the more I dig, the more it becomes apparent to me that I believe majority of these girls coming with their allegations were more so affiliated with the entourage than with R. Kelly. I have come across so many articles in which these people will say they were working for R. Kelly, and one minute they don't see anything until they get mad and say he has a problem with young girls. And then from the young girls, it gets twisted into minor girls. Maybe, just maybe, it was the entourage that was entertaining the young girls. Because if you go and pull up the alleged non-disclosure that was given to these girls, it also prevents them from speaking out against the entourage. Do a little fact checking about the Nation of Islam. The allegations Malcolm X made against the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The background between Farrakhan and Barry Hankerson. And the fact that a lot of these people in this whole shit show are affiliated with the Freemason world or the Islam world, whichever you want to say. Stay tuned for this next video because I didn't want to drag this one along with my next connection. In a statement from Steve Greenberg, he says, in an emotional call last week, Kelly said he was afraid he would die of the virus at the jail. His lawyer told the Daily News. He was extraordinarily emotional. I have never heard him that bad, said Stephen Greenberg, who represents Kelly. Kelly's Brooklyn trial, which has been repeatedly delayed, was further set back last week because of the COVID-19 pandemic and is now set to begin September 29th. Also reported, it says, a change to R. Kelly's arraignment, because for those who were so distracted, maybe you missed the news that R. Kelly's being brought up on new charges. So he will be arraigned April 30th. But it will not be before Judge Ann Donnelly, rather a magistrate judge on duty that day. Interesting. According to this article, the federal judge Ann Donnelly acknowledged the disease has spread to the MCC Chicago, where Kelly is being held. However, the judge said Kelly's motion for release on bond did not present enough evidence the singer is uniquely at risk to contract the coronavirus. Now, I've heard some say that Steve Greenberg should have mentioned his history with bronchitis and other surgeries he's had, which was not included in the motion. And it's just so much more that Stephen Greenberg could have put in his motion. Meanwhile, he filled it with so much other bullshit. And it kind of just makes you side-eye him all the way. Even though I've been side-eyeing him for a while. But this isn't to bash him. This is just an observation that it's some things that need to be stepped up. So again, they're saying they cannot ensure that a defendant with a history incentive and an opportunity to interfere with potential witnesses will not do so. And that again is based off of Kim Fox, Michael Avenatti, and unreliable witnesses. In the release from Mike Leonard, he says, it is unfair to argue that Mr. Kelly should remain in custody because people are posting things on social media. There is zero connection between Mr. Kelly and those postings, other than they are apparently from fans of his. Moreover, the government is hardly in a position to criticize when their very own witnesses, both before and after this indictment was returned, have made extraordinarily public effort to create public perception that Mr. Kelly is a monster through their own social media postings, by appearing on so-called documentaries, and by going on the R. Kelly Survivors Tour. So in so many words, he just basically said what we've been saying. These people have been doing the most on social media, and then have the audacity to claim that they're being intimidated. Meanwhile, we're supposed to turn a blind eye to all the things Angelo and his minions are doing to corrupt this case even more. Some of you may not have noticed that while y'all are busy entertaining the bullshit, these little minions are cleaning up their social media now. If you go on this guy's channel, you will notice all his R. Kelly content is gone. Why? Because they have successfully caused chaos. Why do they need to keep the videos up that provoke such animosity when their job has been completed? Someone last time asked me for the address if they were trying to write R. Kelly, and it's here. Hope you can see it. Just blew it up. Inmate number 09627-035. MCC Chicago Metropolitan Correctional Center, 71 West Van Buren Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60605. Make sure to rewind this and screenshot it if needed. Now, as I get ready to close this video, let me reinstate what I was saying earlier in the video in regards to things we could do proactively. Now, I was pointed in the direction of the ACLU in Chicago. If you've never heard of it, make sure you search it when you finish with this video. And there you will find you can make a complaint. In that complaint, you can outline how all R. Kelly's rights have been violated, and that you would like some assistance in seeing what you can do to aid in this case. There's so many cases in which can be cited in these motions when it comes to R. Kelly's constitutional rights being violated, which have been overlooked. And last but not least, I wanted to point out the fact that, again, people keep confusing the people that support R. Kelly, when in reality, this case can also be used in the future against everyday people. Just like in 2017, when they made it possible to take the statute of limitations off of these sexual abuse claims, which opened the doorway for this whole Me Too agenda. What is that going to say to the person that doesn't have the opportunity to have 4 or 5 lawyers on deck, such as R. Kelly? What about the average man who has to sit here and fight a case like this with a public defender who don't give 2 shits about them? Look at all the statistics of the people who have died in jail. Look at all the statistics of the people who have been unjustly accused of crimes such as R. Kelly. One of my favorite movies from the past time was Rosewood, in which this woman single-handedly initiated the death of so many people by accusing this man of raping her when she was having an affair the whole time. You can go down a whole list of people who were murdered on the strength of a woman saying she was raped by this man. So the fact that these people have banked on the fact in labeling this man a child predator and making it seem like he's such a monster, they were almost certain no one would support him. But if you're like me, you see past the bullshit. And if you want to really help R. Kelly, stay away from the bullshit. As I said, the next video I'm going to pick up with the Nation of Islam and some more connections that I found, including some of these people who are connected from Baltimore, these people within R. Kelly's camp who could be viewed as the enablers, and people who have downright turned their back on R. Kelly for their own personal reasons, even though they're already on record saying they never saw any abuse or anything that these women have claimed happened. We've said this from the beginning. This is all about a political motive. It's apparent to me there's many different forces involved in this case. The driving force, of course, would be these women who are newly empowered. Same women who would parade around with people such as Amber Rose and feel it's okay to have things such as slut walks, but not see how accountability takes a huge role with life choices. It's not fair to label these women victims because they're unhappy with the choices they've made. But again, let's not forget, there's bigger forces driving this lynching of R. Kelly. Let's not get caught up in the minor players. All of these people are connected. Let's not forget. Again, like this video and stay tuned. Have a good night.